Hello, everyone. This is Sean from the Soccernostalgia blog. I have the pleasure to interview Austrian blogger Mr. Wolfgang Berger and Mr. SimonPeter Charamza. This is an interview that's separate from a podcast series. This video interview will serve as a companion piece to a written blog presentation on Rapid Wien's journey during the 1995-96 Cup Winners' Cup. Mr. Berger is the administrator of the Rapid Hammer blog, which is a blog about Rapid Vienna and West Ham United. Mr. SimonPeter Charamza is the head of development at OFB, the Austrian Football Association. Mr. Berger and Mr. Charamza have appeared in the past on a podcast discussing the history of the Austrian national team. Hello, Wolfgang. Hello, Simon. Thank you for being here.
Hello, Shahan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank both of you.
Thanks for having us, and good morning from Austria.
Yes, thank you. So before we begin discussing the season, let's discuss some news about Rapid Vienna.
Well, I would like to mention that our goleador, Hansi Burli, the best striker of Vienna of the last century, maybe Hans Krankl or Johann Krankl, what is his real name, under which he has been baptized. He had his 17th birthday just last week. He celebrated it on the 14th of February. And I would also like to mention something which shows that joy and sorrow are never far apart, because the chairman of the fan club, of the supporters club, which I am a member of for 35 or 45 years, something like that, Gerhard Niederhuber, unfortunately, he died just one day before the 70th birthday of Hans Krankl. And he was really a very man of very much knowledge of Rapid Vienna. Of course, he had an encyclopedic knowledge about Rapid Vienna, and that he died only one day before the 70th birthday of Hans Krankl. It's some coincidence. So I would just like to mention him, and some of the information that I can give you now is from the Grünzeug. That means green stuff. This was the fanzine of the supporters club, and it came out every month, and it was written by him for 30 or 40 years. So just let's have just 1 second to think about Gerhard Niederhuber. Okay, thank you.
Yes, condolences to his family. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Let's start by trying to give an overview to the state of things with Rapid Wien in the early half of the 90s into 1995. What can you say about those years?
By the end or the second half of the 80s, Rapid was a very good team. They played in the European Cup winners final with Hans Krankl at that time, and unfortunately lost to Everton 1-3. But at the beginning of the 90s, just some years later, I think we can say that Rapid Vienna looked into the abyss, because they were quite near to financial administration. They had a very bad situation with the so-called Rapid Aktie. They sold shares, but they had troubles, very, very big troubles with this Rapid Aktie afterwards, because there was... it didn't work out. Let's say it like this. There was also some criminals involved in this thing, but really Rapid looked into the financial abyss, and it was to their very great fortune that one of the sponsors, the Bank Austria, one of the big Austrian banks, they thought about rescuing Rapid. But one situation was also they thought about making a getting together Rapid with Austria Vienna for some time. But of course, it didn't happen like that, because all the Rapid supporters would have cancelled their accounts with the Bank Austria, and therefore, then in the end, Bank Austria saved Rapid, and their situation got much better than with the next years from 1991, 1992, and they also reached the Austrian Cup final, and I think we could tell you a lot about this very interesting situation at this time. And we also had Hans Krankl as manager of Rapid at that time, just for 2 or 3 years, but they were not very successful.
There was also a new president who came on board, Günther Kaltenbrunner, a former player of the club. What can you say about him when he just became the president of the club?
Yeah, he was working at the Bank Austria. He was a former player of the club, a very good player in the 60s, and he worked for the Bank Austria. And in rescuing Rapid, he became president of Rapid. So this was a very important move from Rapid to get him as a president.
Yeah. Now, was he the one who decided that from now on, instead of having vertical stripes, the team's colors would be horizontal stripes, green and white?
Yes, that's true. Like the classic Celtic Glasgow jersey design. And if you ask the fans of Rapid Vienna, I'm pretty sure most of them prefer, green white stripes from the left to the right on our jersey. So that's also an important part, that everything was perfect that time. The jerseys, the team, the strength of the team, and of course the most important thing, the success with the cup title in 1995, the European journey in 95-96, and followed by an amazing championship title with an even more amazing final against Sturm Graz, I guess 2 or 3 rounds before the end of the season, where the Ernst Happel Stadium was fully crowded, and we beat Sturm 2-0 and celebrated our 30th title that time.
Yeah, it was after the European final, and it was icing on the cake, so to speak. But the years before, Rapid hadn't won a title for many years. The last title was in 1988, I think.
That's true.
And then we had the financial crisis, and also Rapid got into the Austrian Cup final in 1991, and they lost to an underdog, to Stockerau, which was from the second tier club, and it was really a bad time. Unfortunately, at this time, Hans Krankl was the manager of the club, and he never was a successful manager with Rapid. So, unfortunately for him, but now his 70th birthday, he's come back to Rapid, and we all hope that there will be some reconciliation now between Krankl and Rapid Vienna.
Of course. Yeah. So in 1995, Rapid defeated DSV Leoben 1-0 to gain entry to the Cup Winners' Cup for 95-96. Now,
yes,
can you discuss Rapid manager Ernst Dokupil and the trajectory of his career?
When we hired Dokupil, Rapid Vienna was used to big names, and Ernst Dokupil, okay, he was a nice guy, or he still is a nice guy, but he wasn't that kind of big manager everyone was hoping for. He coached Austria's oldest club some years before, Vienna FC, and was quite successful. He when he took over the team of Vienna FC, he formed a good team within 2 years, and they moved from the second league to the Bundesliga. And I don't know exactly, but I think that they also reached some European Cup competitions, or at least the qualification round. So it was kind of good work he did there. But then he had some off years and coached St. Pölten for approximately 1 month. And then he became the manager or the coach of Rapid Vienna in 1994. And, financial troubles, some young Austrian players, no international stars in the squad, and kind of an not unpopular, but not very popular manager. And there weren't high expectations when he entered the club, but I think he was brilliant in forming a group of friends, and that was kind of a really important basis for the success in the years 1995, 96, 97.
Sorry, I have to admit that I was quite happy when he became manager of Rapid, because the manager in charge before Mr. Dokupil was Hubert Baumgartner, and Hubert Baumgartner never was a Rapid player, and I always am happy either we have a big name, of course, or we have a Rapid player as a coach, as a manager, and therefore I was quite happy to have him. Even as he had played in 1974 to 1976, I think, for Rapid Vienna, and I still remembered him as a player, and so I was happy. But you are perfectly right, Simon, that he wasn't a big manager at this time.
Now, before we get to the Cup Winners' Cup adventure, let's discuss the recruitment in the off season. How was it regarded at the time? Trifon Ivanov, the Bulgarian defender, came from Neuchâtel Xamax. Peter Stoger came from Wacker Innsbruck. Christian Stumpf came from FC Linz. And Karsten Janker came on loan from FC Köln. And in fact, he said that Tony Polster had recommended him to Dokupil. So that would be a key transfer for this season. And the players who left included Alfred Germanis. He went to Gorica. Robert Nemeth went to SV Oberwart. Gerald Obrecht went to Modling, and Marcus Perk went to Real Sociedad. And also, Robert Peckel had to retire due to injury, age just 30. So when you look at the players that were recruited, they were all key players during this season. So that was smart transfer business, I would say. But at this point, I assume Janker was kind of an unknown quantity, so I don't think much would have been expected of him, or the others, in fact.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Carsten Janker wasn't well known in Austria. You're also right when you say that the legend of our rival Austria Vienna, Tony Polster, he recommended Carsten Janker to the front office of Rapid Vienna. He was a very young guy at that time, but very tall, and yeah, he knew where the goal is. And after the season 1995-96, we knew that he was the most important piece of the team. He scored really important goals. His presence was really important for the team because he's been a big guy. He did some incredible headers. His mentality was really good, but also the mentality of the other new guys was good. So Peter Stöger, for example, I think he was only at Rapid Vienna for 2 seasons, so quite a short time. But yeah, he was also a really important piece of the squad. And probably the craziest guy of those you've named was Trifon Ivanov. the Bulgarian international. He was injured like every second week. He was always trying around, pain in my legs, pain in my ankle, pain in my hamstring. I don't know. When you opened the newspaper, you could read about Ivanov's injuries on a regular basis. Today we know he was, he wasn't the youngest player anymore, and he choked around a bit. So, or there are some stories where people or friends who know him that time say that he just didn't want to practice a lot. So he wasn't like an extra in our medical room, and always had injuries, but nobody knows if he really had injuries. But he was a class player, really important for our defense, extremely dangerous in the offense. When we talk about the games in the Cup Winners competition, you will see that he was an important part in 3 or 4 really important goals, mostly assists or crazy stuff he did before the goals. But yeah, an amazing transfer business in the summer before the season. That's right.
Let's look at the squad in general for this season. We have the veteran Michael Koncel in goal. You have the
Legend.
likes, Provoslav Jovanovic, Peter Gugi. We mentioned Ivanov, Peter Skoetel, Stoger, Stumpf, Zoran Barisic, Janker, Dietmar Kubar, another international. The Polish striker, Maciej Sliwowski, who I believe did not make too many appearances this season. But
no.
Yeah. And Roman Pivarnik in defense, Stefan Marazek, the Russian Sergei Mandreko, Michael Hadz, and Andreas Heraf. Yeah, I guess I would say most of these players had one of the better seasons in this particular season, would you say, as a group?
Yeah. Yes, of course.
Definitely.
Yeah. And what's interesting, the name you have also mentioned is Michael Hadz, as you said. He has just come from the second team of Rapid. He was a very young player, and he featured in most of the European games then. And he has just 2 years ago or something like that, he has published a book on a biography, and it's very interesting to read from Michael Hadz, because this was his first season with the first team, and it ended in the European Cup final.
But John, as you mentioned before, you're absolutely right. I mean, Michael Koncel always had a good season, so he's one of our biggest legends. Ivanov, amazing stuff he did that season. Peter Schöttl, also a very tall guy, a very silent guy as well, but important piece of our team. Also an important piece of the national team in the 90s. Peter Gugi, he made it possible that Rapid Vienna played international that season with his game-winning goal against Leoben. Peter Stöger, Zoran Barisic, Dietmar Kubar, they have been like the centerpiece of our midfield. Stefan Marazek on the left wing, Andreas Heraf on the right wing, extremely fast players, good technique, offensive minded. And yeah, the 2 strikers, Christian Stumpf and Carsten Janker, were unbelievable. Christian Stumpf joined the club coming from FC Linz, a smaller club in Austria. And also, when we talk about him, nobody had high expectations. But yeah, he was unbelievable good headers, solid technique, and yeah, extremely good mentality. That was bad luck for Maciej Sliwowski because he was the third striker and not even a bad one, but it wasn't possible for him to get in the starting lineup very often because of the other two, Christian Stumpf and Carsten Janker, played too well to give him a chance in the starting 11. And then we also had some younger guys like René Haller, Sascha Büringer, Patrick Jovanovic, Oliver Lederer, but like they were part of the roster, but I think most of the fans won't remember those guys when we talk about this amazing season.
Yes. And with Peter Stoger, he'd been a key player for FK Austria for so many seasons. Was that ever a problem with the Rapid fans when he joined?
I don't really think so. It wasn't a big problem at this time. I think it would be different if it happened maybe this year or in the recent history of Austria and Rapid. But at this time, of course, it was always arch rivals, but it wasn't a problem. I think I was happy that he joined because he was a very good player.
Peter Stöger's situation at Rapid Vienna is quite complicated because everyone knows he did some amazing stuff for Rapid Vienna in those 2 seasons when he played for our club. But as you mentioned before, also everybody knows that he's more an Austria Vienna legend than a Rapid Vienna legend. But you can't be mad at him because of his effort for our club, but also you can't really love him because he's such an iconic for our biggest rival. So kind of a weird situation. Yeah, but I think he's pretty happy with his career.
Yes. So let's start off to look at the Cup Winners' Cup matches. In the first round in September, the opponents were the Romanian side, Petrolul Ploiești. So Rapid won the first leg 3-1, and they came away with a scoreless tie in the away match. Do you remember seeing this match at that time?
I don't. Do you remember, Simon? No.
I remember like reading news about the game, but I didn't watch it live on TV. And the away game hasn't been broadcasted live on Austrian television. So yeah, we just had like a recap of the away game. But the home game, it was the first one of this competition. We won 3-1, and we didn't play really well. To be honest, we didn't play really well in the first 3 games of the Cup Winners' Cup. So both games against Petrolul Ploiești and also the first leg against Sporting Lisbon went really good from our side. But yeah, we had luck because their goalkeeper, so Petrolul Ploiești's goalkeeper, showed a really bad performance in the first game. Every cross ball or corner or free kick went through his hands, or yeah, he just failed to bring the ball outside the box. So we scored 3 goals against Petrolul Ploiești after standard situations. I think 1 penalty and 2 corners. And all of these goals happened because the goalie or the defense made a big mistake before. The away game was quite bad as well. Petrol Ploiești was the better team. We had much luck to keep the nil on our side. In the end, it was quite clear because we won the duel 3-1. But those weren't games which we can be proud of.
Right. So the second round was a much sterner test, as you mentioned, with a strong Portuguese side Sporting in October and early November. So this first match at Lisbon, Sporting won 2-0. But it was the second leg that Rapid overturned the deficit in dramatic fashion by scoring in the last minute to tie the series, and in overtime, Rapid won 4-0. And Stump would score a hat trick this night. Was this match, the second leg, one of Rapid's most memorable nights in Europe in their history, perhaps?
Oh, yes, I think so. As you mentioned, the first leg wasn't very good for Rapid Vienna, and they had been quite poor in this game. Also, you had to know that Trifon Ivanov, he had surgery on his meniscus just some days before this game, and anyway, he played, but Rapid was quite poor. But of course, the scoreline was 0-2. It was not impossible to overcome them in the second leg. And what was very interesting at this time, it was Salzburg, Austria Salzburg at this time, only 2 years ago. They had reached the final of the UEFA Cup of the of the third competition, and they had beaten Sporting Lisbon. They also had lost the first leg with 2-0, and in the second leg they won 3-0, which was called the miracle of Salzburg. And the press at this time, they said, okay, Rapid had also lost 2-0 in the away leg, but maybe there will be also a miracle of Rapid Vienna. And therefore, we still had high expectations going into this game, but we would never have thought that it would be such a dramatic, such a drama, and such a big game, which nobody who has been there will ever forget.
Yeah, so we had luck that we haven't lost the first leg higher. Sporting had chances for 3 games, so the 2-0 was quite lucky. And also in the home game, the second leg, like Sporting wasn't the worst team in this game. I would say they have been the better team until the 60th minute, approximately. But we were in front due to a really attractive shot from Didi Kübar, who put the ball under the crossbar. And then a Portuguese player, I think his name was Dani.
Yes.
He received the red card because of a really dumb situation. He shot the ball away.
And just kicked it away. Yes,
he kicked it away.
Yeah, everybody was wondering why he had got the red card. It was just a stupid situation that just some time earlier, Peter Stöger had hit the crossbar. So Rapid was really chasing the game, but they were only 1-0 up. And then the red card was handed out to Dani. And then what happened afterwards, Simon?
Yeah, so it was a really important moment in the game because it wasn't necessary, as Wolfgang mentioned. They were 1 man down and 1 goal down. And from that moment on, we knew we have to give everything what's possible for us. to score that second goal. And it happened in the 90th minute. Again, after a corner. The ball came into the box, then some players hit the ball, but not in a controlled way. And then the ball came to Trifon Ivanov, and he turned around, passed it into the middle. And there was Christian Stumpf waiting and finalized the header into the net. And it was pure chaos in the stadium because the goal scorer Stumpf ran into one direction celebrating the goal, 8 players behind him, and Trifon Ivanov, who celebrated himself for making the assist, ran into the other direction, and only one player after him. But it beautifully shows the character of Trifon Ivanov. So a great guy, funny guy, but he also knew how to celebrate himself and how to praise himself. And so we had like two celebration scenes on the field that moment. And yeah, I don't know it exactly, but I'm pretty sure that that kind of stuff, like put the team together. And that's the main reason why we made it to the final, because the team consisted of 11 best friends.
So we got into extra time then with a goal really at the death of the game, and then Carsten Janke he first got his first injury on his head in this journey, in this European journey, because he had an injury to his head and he had blood above his eye, but he could go on and play on. But this was not the only blood which was split with Carsten Janke in this season. You will hear a little later. And in the first half of the extra time, it was again Stumpf who made the third goal. And he made, again, it was a header, but at this time not from close range as the first goal, but from the edge of the area. He made a very good header into the goal, and but then we got even better than Salzburg. 3-0 would have been enough, as Salzburg had done 2 seasons before to beat Sporting Lisbon. But Rapid, of course, is better, and they scored a 4th goal. Again, it was Carsten Janke who became more and more the hero in this season, and it was again a header from the crossbar into the goal, and then it was Stumpf, but as the ball had already crossed the line, to head again, and it was in the ball hit the back of the net. So it was really ecstatic situation in the stadium in Vienna before 44 or 45,000 fans. It is unbelievable and will never be forgotten, of course.
So Rapid qualified for the quarterfinals to be played in March. Now, these matches were against a Russian side, Dynamo Moscow. So the first leg at Moscow, Rapid won 1-0, again, Stumpf scoring. And the second leg, it was a comfortable win, 3-0, Janker scoring twice. So at this point, Rapid seemed to be a more confident side. And yeah, I don't believe they had much difficulty in these matches against Dynamo Moscow, right?
Well, it was very funny that there is another coincidence, because as I mentioned before, 2 years earlier, Salzburg had beaten Sporting Lisbon to go on and reach the final of the European Cup. And when we got in the draw, we got Dynamo Moscow. I remembered very well that we had in 1985, as you know, in the 1985-86 season, Rapid Vienna had reached the European Cup winners final for the first time. And at this time in the semi-final, we had also drawn Dynamo Moscow.
Oh, that's right.
So there was a big coincidence with that, and another coincidence in this memorable season. And I was very optimistic, only for this, not only for this coincidence, but also, of course, because Moscow was not such a big club at that time, and we were very optimistic reaching the next round.
I can remember I watched the game in the television, and as always, the games in Russia, or matches in Russia, start a little bit earlier because of the climate and the weather conditions. And it was like 4:30 p.m. in Austria when the match started. And my mother always, like ordered a mobile hairdresser who came into a house and cut our hair. And I watched the game, and the hairdresser came, and I told my mom, please, you go first. The woman should cut your hair. I have to watch the game. And it was like 5 p.m. And then my mother said to me, Simon, you have to go to the hairdresser now. Please go to the next room. And it will only last 5 minutes, because for young boys, you just need the machine and 6 millimeters and cut your hair. But those 5 minutes were exactly the time where Rapid Vienna scored the goal. Fortunately, I turned up the volume of the television so that I can hear it in the next room. And I celebrated on my hairdresser chair. But I didn't saw the goal live, and in the end, it was kind of a poor TV experience, because a huge stadium, snow around the pitch, just 3,000 people in the stadium. Like always in Russia, people they pressed honks in the stadium, so you had kind of an annoying sound. But we won 1-0, and it was a good showing from our team. So I would say it was the first game in this Cup Winners' Cup where we have been the better team. So
and you missed something.
Yeah, sorry.
You missed something with the goal. You missed something because it was something extraordinary, but because Stumpf was starting to run from the middle, and it was a solo effort from him with the goal scored afterwards. And this is quite untypical for him, because usually his goals are all done within the box. But this was a goal from running from the middle to the opposite goal. Yeah,
Christian Stumpf would have felt like Lionel Messi in this moment if he would have known Messi that time. But it was a great solo run. As Wolfgang said, really untypical for him. But the second half of the game against Sporting Lisbon and the first leg against Dynamo Moscow were the first really good experiences against international opponents, and it made us feel good, and we were looking happy to the second leg. Wolfgang said before that Carsten Janka became famous under the name Turban Janka, because he had cuts on his head against Sporting Lisbon, but it was just a small cut. But he suffered a very big cut against Dynamo Moscow. Some Russian
quite player. At the beginning, quite at the beginning of the game.
Within the first 5 minutes, I guess.
And it looked very terrible with so much blood on his face. It was really terrible.
But he wanted to stay on the pitch, on the field, and Moscow received a red card after 29 minutes. That has been also really important, because we didn't play well in the first half. but after switching sides, Janka scored the 1-0 with the turban on his head, and then it became like an easy game. Stöger scored the penalty, and Janka finished the game with his second goal to win 3-0.
And it was really Janka's game, because he was with the turban. He was really looking frightening, because he still had, under the turban, he had a lot of blood on his face. And he scored 2 goals, and he was fouled for the penalty, which Stöger converted. So it really was Janka's game, I would say. And he got really one of the most famous here, despite Rapid, as far as I remember, hadn't played with Kübauer, because he had a fractured collarbone at this time, and he could not play. And he was one of the best players of Rapid, a playmaker, of course. But we of course didn't miss him in this game, because all of the guys were doing so well, and especially Carsten Janka was the hero of this game.
Now on to the semifinals.
Yes.
Now on to the semifinal.
Yes. Yes, the semifinals against Dutch side Feyenoord of Ronald Koeman and Henrik Larsson. So this was in April. So for the first leg at Rotterdam, Rapid came away with a credible 1-1 tie. So again, the team is gaining more confidence as the season is progressing. So
you are right, but also Feyenoord Rotterdam was very happy after the draw. They were quite sure that they would win and go on to the final. And with Feyenoord Rotterdam, Austria also has a lot of links, because with Feyenoord Rotterdam, famous Austrian players Ernst Happel and Franz Hasil have played and have won European Cups, and even World Cup, so to speak, the best club in the world, of course, some years before. But
currently,
the manager
Gernot Trauner is becoming a legend in Feyenoord as well. Gernot Trauner, our defender, Austrian defender.
Yeah, he's recently playing for them. Yes,
exactly.
Yeah, and their manager, and he said, "Well, there are no weak points in my team. We will win against Rapid, no question."
It was kind of a difficult match. Very, big stadium, close to the pitch, sold out, with nearly 50,000 people in the stadium. Crazy atmosphere, really unconfident to play in this stadium as an away team. But we managed to receive just 1 goal
from a penalty,
a penalty kick from
a very soft
the star player.
A very soft one, as far as I remember. It was Michael Hatz, the young defender, who was thought to have fouled him, but it was really only a minor touch.
But it was enough without VAR to decide it's gonna be a penalty. Ronald Koeman, their star player, scored the goal. But we managed to get back into the game. Had 2 or 3 smaller chances, and then there was a cross ball from the left side. Stumpf, put the ball with a header further into the middle of the box. And there has been Carsten Janka waiting to score and finish also with a header for the 1-1 draw. And it was a really good situation for us to travel back to Vienna and prepare for one of the most exciting games in our history.
And also Didi Kübauer was back in time. He could then feature in the second leg. He missed the Moscow games and the first leg of Feyenoord Rotterdam because of his fracture of the collarbone. But he was back in time for the memorable second leg.
Yeah, again, Janker and Stumpf, the double act, getting the goals again. So
no, just a second, Shahan, you have to post the link, the YouTube link in the show notes that Wolfgang sent to you this morning because
yes.
it's like a videotape, the ORF, so the Austrian television, created for all fans of Rapid Vienna, and it shows the way to the final. And everyone who is listening to this podcast have to go to the home game against Feyenoord Rotterdam in this YouTube video, and just watch these 5 minutes approximately. All 3 goals have been amazing, really, really spectacular goals. Stumpf was, shooting the ball high above the goalkeeper to save the 2-0 lead. And then, of course, for me, the goal of the century was the 3-0 by Carsten Janker. 7 or 8 players touched the ball only once or twice from the own box straight to the opponent's box. Cross ball by Andy Hera to the middle, and Carsten Janker scored with a side kick, and the stadium, I always get goosebumps when I think about this goal. For me, it's a miracle that the Ernst Happel Stadium is still standing, because in this moment, you wouldn't be surprised if the stadium broke down because of the excitement, and everyone was jumping and hugging and laughing and screaming and crying because everybody knew we are going to Brussels.
And that all happened in the first half of the game. It started very well. Rapid this time didn't leave it late. They started with the first goal in the second minute from Janker, and we were already 3-0 up at the break, and everybody was only celebrating the second half, because it was quite clear that the Feyenoord wouldn't come back, because Rapid was so confident, and they had all the supporters behind them. It was really a memorable second half after a very memorable first half with goals, very memorable too.
And I will promise you, if you talk to any fan of Rapid Vienna who experienced that game or this season, everyone will get goosebumps when he listens to the song Go West, because it was our goal hymn that time, and it was played very often, and also very often after very spectacular goals. And so I just remembered when I watched the YouTube video yesterday, Go West will be one of my favorite songs of all time, just because it was the goal sound, the goal music for Rapid Vienna in this amazing season.
Yes, the same for me. I really have to say that this was a time, even my wife, who is not a big football fan, we had very small children at this time, and we couldn't watch the game in the ground, but we watched it at home at television, and even my wife was really hooked. She was really so excited in this game. I always will remember, and sometimes I say to her, you are a football fan. You remember that game? And a second game, which we also remember quite well, is not more than half a year ago or 9 months ago. We were at London for West Ham against Manchester City. At this time, West Ham was 2-0 up, and then Manchester City, they came level with 2-2, but then the West Ham keeper saved the penalty. And at this time, we were together in the stadium, and she was also very much excited and got hooked, like she had done many years before. And so you are a football fan. I know. I have seen that. So just a short sidekick. Sorry about that. But
No,
she's
good.
my wonderful wife. I wanted to mention her on this podcast.
Of course, yeah. So this was the zenith of the season, basically. This match, I will call perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also Carsten Janker, he got kicked on the head again, but in this game. But at this time, I think he had not received the stitches. It was not so bad as in the games before.
Yeah, that's true. After 1 minute 30 seconds, he got a kick on the head again, but this time without blood. But he will always be Torben Janker for Rapid Vienna fans.
So before we discuss the final, let's discuss the standard tactical formation of this team. So besides Konsel in goal, we have Ivanov and Schotel in the center, and on the flanks you have Hatz and Pivarnik, I guess, or not all the time, but
Shahan, I'm pretty sure that we didn't play 4-4-2. That I think we played 3-5-2 most of the games. So Schöttl in the middle, he was the center part of the defense. Ivanov on the inner left side and Hatz on the inner right side. Because it was kind of the standard formation that time. And another famous coach, Austrian coach, got popular because he was the first coach who implemented the 4-4-2 in Austrian football, and that was Walter Schoko Schachner, which we talked about in our last episode. And he was the coach of GAK, Graz AK, in the early 2000s. And he was praised for being the first coach who implemented the new revolutionary system 4-4-2. So therefore, I'm pretty sure that the old school coach, Ernst Dokopil, preferred to play 3-5-2, a 3-5-2 formation. But we had really strong players on the wings with Andreas Heraf and Stefan Marasek, who ran from defense to offense the entire game.
Right. So the main technical players were Stoger and Kubauer, but the rest of his team, would you say it was more of a physical side?
Trifon Ivanov was a player with a really good technique, especially because he has been a defensive player. There were some, Stefan Marasek, I think, was also a good technical player. But the rest of the team had their strength with a physical game.
Yeah, I would agree. They were really a very strong physical side and could run every other team into the ground, I would say.
Yes.
And with the very good forwards, with Stumpf and Carsten Janker, of course, there was also much physical presence in the box. So this was really a team which played some kind of football, which I like very much. This physical football, quick football, strong offensive game. It was really a joy to watch them. And what I also have to mention is one thing which also was very popular at this time. It was Ernst Dokopil, who started wearing a light brown trench coat in the second second game. He didn't wear it in the Petrolul Ploiești game because it was raining very strong at that game, and he had some anorak or something like that. But from the second round, he began to wear a light brown trench coat. And at this time, if you watch pictures, everything we wore at this time was oversized. So the trench coat was very big. And even the shirts of the players, when you watch and compare them to nowadays, they have very big shirts and everything looks a little oversized. And it was Ernst Dokupil standing very calmly at the edge of the pitch and watching in his light brown trench coat. It is also an iconic picture which I will never forget. And just some years ago, when Andy Marek, the stadium announcer of Rapid Wien, who has retired in the meantime, he presented his memoir. There was a book launch, and many legends were present, and also Ernst Dokupil was there, and he wore the old trench coat from the European season of 1995-96, and it was very great to see him again in this coat. I just had to mention that because it's really funny.
Well, it was his good luck charm, so you have to wear.
Yeah, it worked very well for him.
Yeah.
Unless in the final it stopped working, unfortunately.
Well, let's get to that final. So that's against French side Paris Saint-Germain on May 8th at Brussels, and Paris Saint-Germain would win 1-0. What are your memories, and where were you when this match was played?
My answer, unfortunately, is quite short. I couldn't make this final. I had been to the final about 10 years ago in Rotterdam. I traveled with the bus, but at this final, as I mentioned before, we had small, very young children, and I couldn't make it to the final. Therefore, I also was only on the TV like Simon was.
Yeah, I was too small to travel to Brussels, only 8 years old, nearly 8 years old. But I watched it in TV. It was kind of the first game. My parents allowed me to stay up the entire game. It hasn't been really good for us. It was a typical final, so focus on the defense, focus on like keeping the nil on the own side, and then we received the goal through a free kick by Ngodi. I will never forget his name. I think it must be like 30 meters away from the goal.
Yeah,
the shot would have gone on the far left of the goal, but Peter Schöttl put his foot into the line of the shot and deflected it, and Michael Konzel was without any chance to save the ball, and it was 1-0 from that moment on. And they also had good players like Yuri Chakayev, for example, and a really good team that definitely was better than our team. But as I mentioned before, it was a final. We didn't came up to a high level which we showed in the games before. Everyone was nervous. There were like 15,000 Rapid Vienna fans in Brussels. 15,000 fans of Paris Saint-Germain as well. So it was an extraordinary atmosphere which our young team haven't experienced before, and not a good moment to remember for Rapid Vienna fans, because this game doesn't stand out. It wasn't us in that game.
Yes, it was really an unnecessary goal, so to speak, because the ball from more than 30 meters from the free kick would have gone wide, but Schöttl, who knows why, put his leg out and deflected the ball into the goal. It was impossible to catch it for Konzel. And afterwards we were chasing the game, but we were not good enough against that side. There were chances for Rapid, but in the end, it was not enough. And of course, it was everybody was sad. But when the team came back from Brussels, there were still 3 games to play in the Austrian Championship, and Rapid had a good chance to win the Austrian Championship, and therefore the players had to get up again and go for the Austrian Championship, being proud that they had been in the final, but now they had to get themselves together and play another 3 games.
Which players benefited most from this season? And what was the key to the success of this squad? Was it the players or was it the tactics and the manager?
I remember Carsten Janker giving an interview a few years ago about that time. And he was asked the same question. Has it been the players or has it been the tactical knowledge of Ernst Dokopil? And he laughed and answered, no, it's not been the coach's fault that we have been that good. Ernst Dokopil's biggest strength was to form a team of friends, as I mentioned before, but he has not become famous for his tactical knowledge or coaching better than other coaches. He was a friend of the players. He had a good mood. He's a funny guy. Brought fun to practice, to the matches, but it just was a really great team of players.
Yeah, and as you said, they were really friends. All this team, they had so much fun. They also were the Daltons. I think you should mention that again, Simon, because this is really a funny story.
4 of the funniest guys in that team have been Dietmar Kübauer, Zoran Barisic, Sergej Mandrejko, and Stefan Marasek. And they were like young boys, young men who had a lot of fun with each other. They always did some jokes who were not perfect for showing them on television, but they brought a lot of fun into the team and also into the media, because the media was really happy to broadcast such things as well, and not only like standard interviews, standard phrases when players talk to the media. And yeah, it was a special team, from the Daltons to the coach and to celebrations on the pitch against Dynamo Moscow. So really crazy stories.
And there also was, if I remember well, there was also some kind of Die Schlümpfe at this time. In English it's called the Smurfs. And there is a song from the Smurfs, the Smurf song, and it was also sung from time to time in the ground, and sometimes they called themselves the Smurfs. So there was a lot of fun, a lot of jokes at this time, and I'm very happy that in the end this team has won the Austrian Championship, because it would only be the last final, and of course the final was the biggest achievement to reach as the first Austrian club who has reached a second European final, because the other clubs only got into one final so far, and it was Rapid to reach a final for the second time. And then, of course, unfortunately, they lost. But then in the following 3 games, they made themselves Austrian champions, and they won the last game of the season. And the penultimate game of the season was a derby against Austria of Vienna, and they had to win this one, of course, and they did so. And then it was really the last game of the season against Sturm Graz in the again sold out Vienna Ernst Happel Stadium, and they won 2-0 and crowned themselves champions of Austria. So this was, of course, some consolation for having lost the European Cup final.
Yeah, and Sean, because you asked which players benefited the most, of course, I would say Michael Konzel. He was transferred to AS Roma afterwards and became the best goalkeeper of the Serie A in his first season. He's club legend there. That wouldn't have been possible without our international success in the season 95-96. Dietmar Kübauer joined Real Sociedad, I think 1 or 2 years later, and then also played for VfL Wolfsburg in Germany. And Carsten Janker, he joined Bayern Munich directly after the season. I think we received 7 million shilling. So it's like nowadays 300,000 euros for him. And he won the Champions League with Bayern Munich. He lost against Manchester United in the final, but he won with Bayern Munich against Valencia. And so Rapid Vienna was an important part of his career as well, because I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have got a chance at Cologne, but he got the chance at Rapid Vienna, and then he moved to Munich and became a really important striker for them, as well for the German national team.
Yeah. He lost one final again, but then 2 years later, he won the final, as you mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah. So unfortunately, Rapid could not keep the best players. All of them left after this season, or at least 2 seasons afterwards. So it took some time until Rapid again won another championship.
Yeah, we should also mention that Stumpf also gained 2 caps this season, and Andreas Heraf gained his first cap this season, and Marazek was also capped around this 95-96 years. Michael Hatz was capped this year, 96, and he also joined Serie A. He joined Italian side Reggiana, so he also benefited. And while I was researching this topic, my main sources were French magazines like Onze Mondial or France Football. And the common theme that I came across was that most people talked about the unity of the squad. And Michael Konzel called it this a solid group, a family. And Stroger said that he had never seen such unity anywhere. And this was one of the reasons for the success of the squad this year. So
yeah, that's pretty right. That's pretty right. Yeah.
So it echoed everything you guys have been saying today. So yeah. Now this is something to ponder. Was it bad luck that this team's ascent coincided with the Bosman ruling, or was it always inevitable for an Austrian team to be able to hold on to its best players?
It's also always for Austrian teams, it was quite difficult to hold on to their best players, because the possibility to earn as much money as abroad isn't been there in has never been there in Austria. And of course, the best players after some time, or after a short time, sometimes left for abroad. And it was always, for Austrian players, it was a big kind of achievement to play abroad. So of course it was quite clear that they would have gone anyway to abroad. But of course, the Bosman rule made it even more difficult for players to stay in Austria and for the clubs to keep hold of them.
Yes. So yeah, so Rapid, after winning the title, they would finish second in 97. And yeah, that was kind of the extent. And like you said, most of the players would leave. In closing, For most Rapid historians, is this 1996 squad considered the best Rapid team, or is it the 1985 side that also reached the Cup Winners' Cup final?
Well, we could have a lot of dispute around that. In my opinion, the 85 team, 86 team was, of course, also a very good team with Hans Krankel and, of course, Panenka, who is still mentioned with his Panenka kick, the penalty kick. There's still everybody saying he did a Panenka if somebody scores a penalty like Panenka did in the European Championship for Czechoslovakia. So for me, of course, this team with Hans Krankel and Antonin Panenka is a very good team. But of course, you can dispute that. And well, in my opinion, this team of 95, 96 almost is on the same level as the other one. But for me, always the 80s team will be the best one, which for me is the best one.
Yeah, I'm with Wolfgang. It's really hard to decide which team is better, because both of them reached the same success, losing a final. But yeah, in the 80s we had some internationally more important players with Hans Krankel and Antonin Panenka up front. That wasn't the case in the 90s. So I think when you break it down, or when you discuss the details, the 80s team consisted of the better football players. But in the end, the 90s team also managed a very good success run. But also our team of 2005 was really good. They won the championship in Austria and made it to the Champions League group stage, which is also a big success for an Austrian team. Okay, we lost nearly every game, I don't know, in the group stage, but I think it's way more difficult to reach the group stage of the Champions League than reaching, for example, the quarterfinal or semifinal in the third biggest European competition. But it's very difficult to compare the today's competitions with the competitions in the early 2000s, with the old competitions in the 90s and in the 80s. So football has changed enormously. So I think every single of those teams stands out for their period or for their decade.
Yeah, of course, the team the Hickersberger, which you have mentioned now, was the Champions League group stage. What was very good team, and afterwards the team under Peter Packhult, which twice eliminated Aston Villa and got into the group stage of the Europa League. They are also very well known and will never be forgotten. This was also a very good time for Rapid Vienna.
And for example, we won the Mitropa Cup in 1961, I guess. And that time, that was kind of the Champions League. So it would be unfair to not talk about this team because it was also a really, really good team in Europe in 1961.
And also in the time between the two wars, Rapid was really one of the best teams in Europe. So of course we are very proud of our history. And now it's a little more difficult for Austrian clubs than it was at that time. So it was really much fun talking again with you, Shahan.
Indeed. I want to thank both of you for this interview and sharing your memories of this season. And so thanks again. And I would urge everyone to read the main blog article as well for more detail. The link is included in this video upload description, along with our respective contact information. So thank you again, and hope to see you again for more Austrian football discussions in the future.
Thanks for having us, Shahan.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you. Have a good day and a good night. Bye-bye.